so much you can't comprehend. And when you see it, you don't think it'll end. I'll take everything you gave me. I'll wear it so everyone can see that you left more than the eye can see. They'll see your stellar legacy. Everybody just look up tonight. You'll see that everything is alright. See, the world's got a halo. What is it that really we know? This time love's all mine. You're mine.
Hi, you guys. Welcome back. This is Richard Sachs, your host on Lost Arts Radio. Nice to be with you again. And this time we have another fun discussion because our friend Loren Lockman was on, and we wanted to go into some other issues from our general talk on fasting and healing, where that comes from, steps that people go through, and some examples, which I really like, if we have time to share some of those of specific stories that have happened at Tanglewood. Loren is the founder and person that runs Tanglewood in Costa Rica, and it's one of the main water fasting places in the world with the most experience, and a beautiful place that we got into the description of somewhat last time. So you should go back and listen to the last one if you missed it. And, it was only a short discussion compared to what there is to talk about related to that. So this time we get a chance to get more into some specifics. One is hydration, but wherever else we want to go, it's going to be interesting. We'll just bring in as much as we can, and it's going to go by in a flash. So glad you're here to enjoy it, and welcome, Loren. See what happens.
Richard?
It's going to be
it's great to be back with you.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
So last time, do you want to just do a 1-minute recap of what Tanglewood is for the people that didn't catch us last time?
Absolutely, sure. I was afraid you were going to ask me to recap what I said last time. I don't
Not verbatim, it's okay.
yeah, but in terms of what Tanglewood is. So Tanglewood is a 23-and-a-half-year-old water-only fasting center. And I'm guessing that many of the people who listen to you will understand water-only fasting. Some may not. Fasting is nature's way of allowing the organism to cleanse and heal. We are self-cleansing and self-healing organisms. Both cleansing and healing are biological processes. And so what fasting does is it simply allows us to get out of the organism's way. What we do here is we guide people through a process that is typically about 5 weeks, although we take people by the week, so you could come for 1 week to up to 10 weeks at a time. The average, most of our guests are here for 4 to 6 weeks. What happens in that time is they'll spend anywhere from 2/3 to 3/4 of that time, depending on how long the fast is, in the fasting process, which means consuming only water, nothing else, no supplements, no minerals, no nutrients added. It turns out that there's a cascade of beneficial physiological changes that occur only in the absence of nutrients or calories. And so our guests consume only water. This water actually comes from a spring right here on site. We collect it at the bottom of the property. We pump it up to the top where we distribute it throughout the property. So our toilets, our sinks and showers all have perfect spring water. And Costa Rica is known for its perfect water.
Yeah.
And so people spend 21 to 30 days, usually, sometimes less and sometimes more, consuming only water, and then they break their fast in a very controlled manner, consuming high water content fruits, and later on leafy greens, and then finally green salads. And what happens is amazing. Right? The process is about getting out of the body's way so it can cleanse and heal itself. When we do that, we see incredible things. As we probably discussed last time, 100% success with hypertension, minus one person out of more than 400. 100% success with type 2 diabetes. Very high rates of success with practically everything. Not everything. There are some things that won't heal, but very few. I mean, the body's amazing. Given the right conditions and opportunity, caught early enough, very few things can't heal.
Well, just to fill in for curiosity's sake,
sure.
What are kinds of things that usually don't benefit from fasting?
Well, there are very few things, perhaps no things, that don't benefit from fasting. But for instance, I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I got an email from two young men who said, our parents and I, and us, the two of them, all watch all your videos. We're big fans. Last week, our dad was, did I tell you this story?
I don't remember.
Okay. So last week, our dad was diagnosed with liver cancer. The tumor in his liver, it turned out, so the liver is the largest organ in the body.
Right.
Okay. The tumor in the liver was bigger than the liver.
I do remember now, but a lot of people who are just tuning in may not. So
yeah.
It's an important story.
Yeah, he was told at that point, by the time they discovered it, that there was nothing they could do for him, that he would survive perhaps 2 or 3 weeks. That was it. Mm-hmm. And so they wrote to me to say, can fasting help him? Would you be willing to guide him through the process? And my response was, in a situation like this, this is a very advanced situation. And by the way, it wasn't just in the liver. That's where it started. It had already spread throughout the body.
Right.
And so, what I said to them was, this is a difficult situation. Now, I can't say it's impossible, but it's very difficult. Frankly, the odds aren't very good, but your dad has nothing to lose with the exception of whatever, the investment. And they said money's not important. Money's not an issue for us really, and that's not a problem. So he decided to fast. He fasted at home with my guidance via Skype. I work with people that way as well as here. And as it turns out, he did not survive. But he was much more comfortable. Mm-hmm. He felt much better. He was super grateful. And it's interesting because just last week, practically once a month, I hear from his widow, who is still a fan, still watches my videos, comes onto my live broadcasts, is very grateful for the process, wow. Is hoping to come here at some point herself.
Yeah.
Same with the two sons. And so, they all saw this as a beneficial thing, unfortunately taken too late because the condition had progressed so far that it's just difficult to heal from. So that's really the only case I can think of. I mean, there are people who can't fast, but there are really no conditions that don't benefit, because okay. Even in a situation like that, right. Where the cancer ultimately killed him, he was certainly felt better. It helped him in various ways.
Right. Yeah. If I knew I was going to die soon, doing it fasting would be I would think a great idea, because your body can relax and everything's a lot more peaceful.
That's right. Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. Not a personal story, but years ago I dated a woman who sold essential oils, and it was Young Living Oils. You're probably familiar with the company.
I am, yeah.
The founder of the company, I don't recall his name. Perhaps I think his name was Young.
Okay.
And he was diagnosed with some terminal condition and was told, sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. Right. He decided he would starve himself to death, that he didn't want to die from the disease. He would rather starve to death. He didn't think it would take that long. Right. He stopped eating and completely recovered.
Yeah, I hopefully wasn't too disappointed. Starving yourself to death like that
that's right.
Harder to do than you think.
Well, he was a failure, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've seen a lot of cancers of various kinds.
We have. I mean, it's not our primary thing. I suspect what happens is that most people, regardless how alternative-minded they may have been, mm-hmm. when they hear the big C from their practitioner, they often run right back into the arms of allopathic medicine.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but we do see cancers. I'm actually fasting a gentleman right now. It's a similar situation. Similar. He's alive, but similar in that he was told he's got cancer throughout his body. I think it started in the colon. It has moved now to various other places, and I may be wrong about where it started. I don't recall. But he was told, he wrote to me several weeks ago and said, I'm in the hospital. They're telling me they can't do anything for me. They don't even think that chemotherapy is going to help. I'm a big fan. I've been watching your videos. I wish I had done this much sooner, but would you be willing to guide me through the process? And so he actually can't even get out of bed. He's at home now. He has home health care coming in every day to change him. He has a catheter. He can't get up. And he's feeling a lot better. And it's good. Yeah, I mean, so, again, whether or not, and we had the same kind of conversation, someone who's been given a death sentence, essentially. Right. I can't promise that that's going to recover. Yeah. But there's a chance, and he really has no other chance that he's aware of. There's a chance, and no matter what happens, it's going to be better than if he didn't do it. Well, exactly. I mean, again, he's already feeling better. He feels clear. It's interesting that the home healthcare people have been telling him these last couple of days, wow, like when he first started, he was ashen. He's got color back in his cheeks. He looks much more alive than he did 10 days ago. Did he have chemotherapy and radiation and stuff like that? No, they told him that it wouldn't help. Okay. They told him there's nothing. They're not giving him narcotics right now, I guess. He is not taking anything. And with the exception, so generally speaking, you don't take anything while you're fasting. You really can't take these drugs. I thought you said he had home health care, and they're really into that kind of stuff usually. Yeah, well, he's in the UK. I don't know how different it is, but they're not forcing anything on him. They really have said to him, what they said to him was, when they dismissed him, was they said, you might as well, he can't, it's not like he can do much because he can't really walk right now. But they said, go ahead and eat whatever you want. Just have a good time. Right. You're down to weeks, and you might as well enjoy it. Right. And he decided he wasn't willing to throw in the towel at this point at 48. Wow, that's inspiring. Yeah. Now there's a couple of difficult situations, but we see, for instance, we've had a very high success rate with breast cancer. Where we've had, and it's interesting. In fact, it's instructive, and I think it's really important to talk about this, because whether someone goes the conventional route of chemotherapy, radiation, whether they believe that CBD oil is going to, I've got a friend in the UK who tells people that CBD is going to cure their cancer, and I've had some pretty strong conversations with them, because what I said to him is, look, CBD may indeed kill the tumor. I don't really know much about that. But you've got to be really clear that that's not curing cancer. So we come back to the women with breast cancer. Over the last 23 years, I've probably worked with 50 women with breast cancer. I don't know the exact number, but somewhere around there. Yeah. About 2 a year on average. In almost every case, in most cases, these were women who had already had breast cancer, had already had a lumpectomy, a mastectomy, a radical mastectomy, radiation, and or chemotherapy. And were told 3 to 6 years earlier that they were healthy and could go live their life. They were told, okay, there's no more cancer, you're perfectly healthy. Yeah. No one ever said to any of these women, you should be careful about what you eat and drink. You need to, nothing like that. They just said you're healthy, clean bill of health. Right. So and then they're surprised, of course, they're shocked when cancer comes back in the other breast, or sometimes in the same one if they still have it. It's really common. And it's very, very common. In fact, as I'm sure you're probably aware, and maybe some of your viewers may not be, success, according to conventional medicine, is when someone's alive 5 years after. Exactly. The next day they could die, it would still be a success. That's right. Yeah. And this, to my way of thinking, this isn't particularly successful. I don't know how many people are willing to accept that as being success, but that's the way they consider it. Right. And so, and breast cancer is one of the more successful cancers. In terms of treatment, women do tend to make it 5 years, but often not 6, without having cancer return. Mm-hmm. They're surprised. Every one of them is surprised. They told me I was healthy. And what I explained to them is that as is virtually always the case with conventional medical treatment, and frankly, many alternatives to it.
Yeah.
They're just suppressing symptoms. And they say, no, but they removed the cancer. Yeah, the cancer, the tumor, was a symptom.
Yeah, exactly.
The underlying condition in the body was toxicity and poor immune function. It's said, I can't verify this personally, but it's said that every human body has cancer cells forming all the time.
Right.
But that in the 50% of us now, it's now 50% will develop cancer, so only 50% don't. In the 50% of us that don't have a problem with cancer, that's because our body's immune function is able to destroy those cells as they form, so it never develops. Okay, so the ability to destroy tumors is something that we should all be able to do. Many people, unfortunately, about half the population has lost that ability, and I think what happens is vitality decreases as a result of many things: toxicity, dehydration, lack of sleep, probably genetic factors. Vitality is lower than it should be. The body's unable to function the way it should, and so what happens is they remove the symptom without ever addressing the cause. And again, the same thing's true with CBD. If you think that you've healed your cancer because you use CBD and the tumor's gone, or whatever it might be, black salve, whatever you're doing to remove a tumor, you need to understand that's a symptom. And until you address the underlying conditions of toxicity and poor immune function, it's very likely that cancer is going to come back.
Yeah, well, that's like with the black salve. People keep finding new skin cancers, and they keep dissolving it with the black salve, and they don't, I guess it always comes down to the question, and there's a lot of answers to this. I mean, even Simoncini says cancer is fungus, right? And there's all these different explanations. At this point, what do you think it is? What do you think cancer is?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think the way I've always thought about it is that this is our intelligent body's attempt to protect us from toxicity, and so it walls off this little group of rogue cells that are deformed from toxicity, and that's a tumor. Fortunately, I mean, here's the good news, and I think this is good news. This is across the board, not just talking about cancer, but we really don't need to know. I mean, you might want to know. I'd like to know. Don't get me wrong. I'm very curious. But the bottom line is that as long as we get out of the body's way and do it early enough, and to the great extent that we need to, the body will generally heal itself. And so whatever the cause is, we can eliminate it. Here's the thing. In fact, let's come back to this for a second. If I'm correct that it's toxicity, and I think that's pretty evident, right? I mean, there's so many examples of this. If you smoke cigarettes and you're constantly taking toxic particulate matter into your lungs, you're likely to develop lung cancer or some related condition.
And test animals are given cancer specifically with toxic chemicals.
Exactly. I mean, exactly. I don't know. You might have heard about this in North America, where in the U.S. state troopers sit on these long stretches of straight highway waiting for a car on the horizon. What they used to do is they used to sit there with the radar gun in their lap, ready to go. Yeah. And then it turned out they realized after years of doing this that these highway patrolmen had exceptionally high rates of testicular cancer. Well, that's because the radar gun is leaking radiation all the time.
Yeah.
And it's sitting in their lap. So they no longer keep them in their lap. They're now sitting in a holster.
Now they've got, instead, a brain tumor generator called a cell phone, and they hold it on their head all the time.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's a really, really good point. Anytime we're exposing the body to toxicity of any kind, we are going to develop more cancer. And, for many years, and I'm not sure if this is still true, but for probably 20 or 30 years, the fastest growing form of cancer in North America, at least, was colon cancer, and directly correlated to the decline in the average person's diet. According to studies published in the last couple of years, the average North American now gets over 96% of their calories from ultra-processed foods and animal products. Which I disagree with the statement I just made. I'm just telling you what they report, and the reason I disagree is because they call this ultra-processed stuff food.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's not food. But, most people are getting their calories, most of their calories from non-foods.
But it is a really good cheap deal, though. You
Absolutely.
can get pounds and pounds of it for not much money.
Exactly. Yeah. That's unfortunately, I mean, this is the reason why obesity and many of the conditions related to it are inordinately higher in low income, low socioeconomic status. I mean, it's low income and low education that have people eating the worst crap because it's cheap.
Or it could be high-end conventional education, too, where they teach you that's fine.
Well, perhaps. I mean, I think most of the people I know, there are some who fall into that, but I think most people who are maybe more educated, maybe a little bit better off, realize that that's nonsense, that it can't be okay.
They're starting to question authority.
Yeah, well, I mean, people still believe authority. I mean, I think, unfortunately, that has a long way to go. We can talk about masks and all the nonsense going on now,
right.
But even though the science is actually really clear about this, and I'm sure you're aware, it was some weeks ago, Fauci came out and admitted that wearing masks is nothing for you. And then, I don't know who came down on him, he had to retract that and said he had lied.
Yeah. Now he's always wearing one, at least for the camera.
Right. The bottom line is they absolutely do nothing for you. I saw a great thing someone had posted on Facebook. It said wearing a mask, to prevent a virus from getting to you is like putting up a chain link fence to keep out mosquitoes.
Yeah, there are very few mosquitoes stopped by the chain link fence that run into the metal, right?
Not that many. Yeah, most of them, even if they've got their eyes closed, you're going to go right through the big hole in the middle.
Well, in our city, the mayor just made a declaration that you have to wear masks, and she just memorized the appropriate stuff from CDC, which is the fountain of all wisdom, and she was saying,
of course.
Don't worry, because to really understand the deeper aspect of this, your mask doesn't protect you, it protects everybody else. That's why, you're basically, a murderer if you don't wear a mask, and the other
that's right. That's
is
right.
supposed to protect you.
That's right. Yeah, and this, of course, I mean, it's a brilliant strategy.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very smart. They're perhaps evil is a fair word, but very, very intelligent about how they're going about this.
Right.
It's absolute manipulation, and it's insane that so many people aren't questioning authority. I mean, some people are, but so many people aren't.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Sometimes I'm as you probably know, Facebook limits the number of Facebook friends you can have to 5,000. So I'm at my limit now for years. And sometimes I had someone who wanted me to come on her podcast, and she said, friend me so I can more easily communicate with you. And I said, well, I'm at my limit, but let me see if, maybe there's somebody. And I realized all I have to do is I just have to post something that says, wearing face masks, wearing masks has been proven to not be necessary or beneficial to you. And half a dozen people are going to unfriend me.
Okay. So you can do a rotation system that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. It's, and it doesn't, I mean, up until now, I could say any outrageous thing I wanted. And people, even if they didn't agree with me, but now if I talk about wearing a mask, if I talk about, maybe they're inflating numbers, there are going to be people who are deeply offended.
Well, the fear theme has worked for thousands and thousands of years.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, unfortunately, what I think is true, Richard, is that fear is the number one motivator for most people most of the time. Not just around this, but around everything.
And it's its own toxin if you talk biologically.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. It's it's interesting because I just had this conversation with a client recently who is fasting with me, and I said, listen, I understand that you're going through some things that you're like it makes you a little bit nervous, but I want you to surrender to the process. I want you to contact me in the moment that you're concerned about something, but I want you to relax. You have to be able to breathe. In fact, I remember years ago, there was a guy, we were still in the U.S., and I had a client. It was a client who had come to, I used to offer a monthly full-day seminar. I offered lots of lectures and classes, etc., at the center. And this guy would come to those types of events, but he'd never fasted with me. And he called me up one day, and he said, Loren, he said, I'm fasting at home. I'm 10 days in. I didn't come to you because I didn't feel like I could afford to. And but I'm fasting on my own. And I've got all these things going on. And I'm kind of terrified. I don't know if this is okay. And so I said, are you taking vital signs? He said, no. I said, okay, I'll come on over. And I happened to have some time. I drove to his house. He was 15, 20 minutes away. Yeah. And I walk into his bedroom, and he's lying on his bed like this, paralyzed with fear. Wow. I said, this doesn't do. You can't, if this is how you're going to go through this isn't helping you.
You could be the first person who proves that fasting is bad if you try hard enough.
That's right, exactly. If you really work at it, you can make this bad for you as well.
So there's a lot of natural healing people that agree that toxicity and deficiency are, two major causes of problems, but they don't understand. There's deeper levels of it, because if it was just that as it appears on the surface, the fastest way to become deficient in everything would be to fast.
That's right. Yeah. And it's crazy, but that doesn't happen. It takes 4 to 6 weeks without vitamin C if you're eating to create scurvy. It's the same with other deficiency conditions. Generally speaking, in 4 to 6 weeks, if you're not consuming an essential nutrient, you're going to have a problem. And yet, I've taken more than 700 people, 6 weeks or longer on only water. Longest one was 4.5 months, and not one of them's
0% gets scurvy.
That's correct. We've had zero scurvy. We did have a gentleman once develop a deficiency condition, but it turned out the doctors who researched what was going on came back to me and said, I'm guessing that he is one of maybe 24 people on the planet who can't store thiamine. And so he'd become thiamine deficient. But that, it's a very, very unusual situation.
Right.
We don't see this on a regular basis, even though I'm fasting probably now a dozen or more people per year for 6 weeks or longer every year. It doesn't happen. So something very different is going on to what people think. In fact, I'll tell you a story that might really shock you. And this is representative. It's not a one-off. We see this kind of thing regularly. Okay. But I had a woman contact me some years ago, probably 8 years ago. I had done a full-day seminar in one of those communities right outside of Phoenix. As you know, Phoenix, there's like a whole bunch of jurisdictions that I don't remember which one, but we were somewhere in the Phoenix greater area.
Right.
And she contacted me maybe a month later and said, Loren, I was at your seminar there, and it was amazing, and you've really intrigued me with what you had to say about fasting. But I have a magnesium deficiency, and my doctor, my naturopath, has me on this massive magnesium supplement, and I'm fine as long as I take it. But as soon as I stop taking it, I've got all these symptoms of magnesium deficiency.
Okay.
And I explained to her, so I asked her what she was eating. Well, she said, I already eat the way you recommend. I'm living on fruit and salad. That's it. I've been doing this for several years. Generally speaking, I feel good, and it feels like it's great, but I've got a magnesium deficiency. I said, hang on. How often are you eating salad? She said, I eat a giant salad every night. Well, as I'm sure you know, magnesium is the central atom in chlorophyll. And so you're eating a big green salad every night. You should be getting a lot of magnesium.
Yeah.
How can you have a problem? So I explained to her. I said, okay, well, so here's what this tells me. Okay, you're not magnesium deficient because of a lack of magnesium. Okay, I mean, obviously, if you take a giant supplement, you'll get enough magnesium, but you should be able to get your magnesium from your diet. And even without eating a giant salad every night, you shouldn't have trouble with magnesium. So what this tells me is that the issue, and this is, I think, usually the case, obviously, if someone has a really poor diet. I don't know if you remember hearing some years ago, 10 years ago, maybe less, there was a young woman somewhere in the U.S., and she was in the news. I think she was 22 or 23 because she had serious liver and kidney disease at that age. And it turns out what had happened was when she was 3, her mother took her to McDonald's. She loved chicken McNuggets, and that's all she'd eaten for 20 years.
Wow.
Nothing but chicken McNuggets.
No barbecue sauce for the other food group?
Right, exactly. What's amazing to me isn't that she developed liver and kidney disease, it's that she was alive after 20 years. I mean, as far as I know, there's no actual food in chicken McNuggets.
That could be a Guinness World Record, right? For surviving.
Crazy stuff. I mean, so obviously, if you eat an extremely bad diet, you remember Super Size Me.
Yeah.
Right. Morgan Spurlock went 30 days eating only McDonald's, and he ate everything, including green salads. But he ate 3 times a day at McDonald's. Right. The health professionals he contacted all said, "Yeah, no big deal. You'll be fine. Your cholesterol goes up a little bit, your triglycerides go up a little bit." And 2 weeks later, they were begging him to stop so he wouldn't die. After 2 weeks, and this woman did this for 20 years. So I mean, obviously, if you eat a really bad diet, you're going to have deficiencies. You're going to have problems.
Yeah.
But most people, even most people eating a conventional diet, which is crap, which is disease promoting,
right?
Because so many foods are fortified with nutrients, most people shouldn't really be deficient in most major nutrients or nutrient groups because it's added to everything that they're consuming, right? You probably remember Anita Bryant.
Yeah.
Anita Bryant, for those of you too young to remember Anita Bryant was a former Miss America who back in the 60s was the spokesperson for Minute Maid orange juice, right? And she did commercials that ran on TV for a while. I don't remember how long. It seems like a long time. Maybe it wasn't.
Donald Duck also promoted it, and that was a big factor too.
I never trusted Donald Duck, so I never paid any attention.
He was really sincere in this, but that's okay.
So Anita Bryant, the tagline was, "A day without orange juice is like a day without sunshine." Well, of course, people drink orange juice. I mean, originally the idea was vitamin C. Right? How much vitamin C is in the Minute Maid orange juice from the orange? 0. Because vitamin C is incredibly unstable, and it's completely destroyed by pasteurization.
Yeah, well, they pasteurize it, and then some of it gets frozen too.
Right. I don't know how freezing it affects vitamin C, but I can tell you that just juicing it, just processing the orange into orange juice. I mean, in a study with commercial tomato pressing operation, making tomato sauce or tomato paste or something, a giant cylinder with a piston that came down and crushed many kilograms of tomatoes all at one time. They found that 40% of the vitamin C was lost in 3 minutes. Wow, incredible. And this isn't a juicer that's sucking air in. This is a piston that's actually forcing air out of the situation. Yeah. Still, 40% lost. So there's no vitamin C left. I mean, what people are getting from drinking commercial orange juice is fortified. It's been added in a lab, from vitamin C made in a laboratory. Right. But people drinking it still aren't going to wind up with a vitamin C deficiency because there is vitamin C there. Yeah. So what's happening in most cases, in my experience, where there are deficiencies is people like this girl with the magnesium deficiency. Girl's the wrong word. She was probably 40. Yeah. What's going on there is that the deficiency is being caused by the fact that her body is not properly digesting, absorbing, or assimilating, or accessing what's already present. Yeah. And here's what's crazy. So she went 21 days on only water, and it was around, she stopped taking the supplement, began her fast. Within 2 or 3 days, began to exhibit some of the symptoms of magnesium deficiency. About 10 days, if I remember correctly, 10 to 14 days later, all those symptoms were gone. They disappeared while consuming only water, no magnesium present. And what that tells us is the magnesium was already there. And this is almost always the case. B12. B12 is a big one. As a long-time vegan, vegetarian, most people think, even practitioners, if you're a vegan or vegetarian, you have to supplement with B12. Right. Because B12 is made by bacteria. It's found mostly in animal products. There's very little in plant foods, if any. Tiny amounts. But, in order to get enough, you have to eat animal products. If you're not doing that, you have to take supplements. What most people don't realize, is that people eating animal products have roughly the identical rate of B12 deficiency
deficiency.
problems.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's, the presence of tons of B12 in your food doesn't protect you from being B12 deficient. And that's because most people aren't deficient from lack of the nutrient. They're deficient because the body's not working properly.
Yeah. And that included the guy who had the defect that couldn't absorb thiamine, right? It was just more permanent with him.
That's right. Yeah, he somehow inherited this particular defect, as you said. But yeah, it wasn't about a lack of thiamine in his diet.
And interestingly enough, even though vitamin C is not very stable, the people that did fast with you that went 4 weeks and over, they weren't like about to get scurvy on the next day. They didn't show any signs of it at all. Right?
No. Again, as I may have mentioned before, my longest client fast was 18 and a half weeks, only water. That's 4.5 months. Okay, yeah. There was not only were there no deficiency conditions, but coming back to the original conversation, he came to me with stage 4 testicular cancer, and by the time he was finished, they could not find a trace of cancer.
And stage 4 means it was in other parts of the body, right?
Well, by stage 3, it's already started to move into other parts of the body. Okay. Stage 4, if I remember, it has to be in the lymphatic system as well as in one or more additional organs.
Right, so the doctors are saying you've got so many weeks, we're guessing, and then you're going to die.
Generally speaking, with stage 4, most people don't survive that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to get into whatever connected issues that we didn't get to last time, at least start to, that you think are most important. And I know one of those is probably hydration, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, as I think you're aware, what I teach in practice is pretty much right down the line of what's called natural hygiene.
Yeah, Shelton,
right?
You mean?
Yeah, exactly. Herbert Shelton was the modern father of fasting and he didn't invent all the ideas and principles, but he brought them into the 20th century, practiced in Texas, ran what they called back then a sanitarium where people would go to fast.
But what I wonder about Shelton is, was he actually living a lifestyle like what you're teaching? And
no,
I get the feeling that he was eating all kinds of junk.
Well, I don't know exactly what he was eating. There have been, there was a woman who recently died who was his consort for many years. And, she's had some things to say about what he actually did. It's clear that he didn't follow the lifestyle choices that he promoted, not completely, that he overworked.
That's not a condemnation, because
no,
it's really hard to do what you believe in. There's a lot involved in that, right?
Well, the truth is, it's incredibly simple.
It's simple, but there are barriers in your own psychology with most people.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just going to say, simple and easy are two different things, right?
Yeah, so the deepest things are always super simple.
Exactly. The truth is generally simple, right? That's typically the way it works. All other things being equal, the simplest explanation is usually truth. That's Occam's razor.
Yeah.
Occam's razor. So
it's horses, not zebras.
Right. The issue, of course, is that, as you say, people are acculturated. People have habits. People don't want to appear to be so different from everyone else.
Right. Right.
Someone once said to me, raw vegans are strange people. And I'm raw vegan now for 29.
Strange by the conventional point of view, right?
Well, strange means not normal. That's all strange means. Normal means typical, and strange means different than that.
Right? I have a different definition of normal. I think it's whatever we're designed to be able to do. And that if you're in a mental hospital, which, by the way, we are.
Right, exactly.
If all of the patients and all of the staff, almost all of them, are totally insane, does that mean insanity is normal?
Yes. In that institution.
That definition, right.
Listen, I believe that is the definition. Of course,
okay.
English is a living language, and so it's changing all the time.
Right.
And most people understand normal to mean how it should be. That's how it's. But I think the actual definition, a norm is an average.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
normal blood pressure is 120/80. That's not healthy blood pressure, although medicine seems to think it is because that's what everybody has.
Yeah.
That's actually only normal. We can do better than that.
Right.
Normal pulse for somebody, at the age of 60 is probably 72. That's normal. It's not healthy. It should be closer to 50, somewhere in that range.
You're saying the heart rate, resting
Yes,
heart rate.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, I think, I think this is the way we really need to think about it. But we can use different words. It doesn't matter. I don't want to get
Yeah,
caught
as
up.
long as we know what we mean, that's fine.
Exactly. Right. Where are we going with that?
Well, hydration is what we're going off into.
Well, so yes, we talk about hydration. The bottom line is that there's another place where medicine says you can only be a few percentage points dehydrated, and I think they believe that because they believe that the average person, they say that babies are 75 or 80% water, but that it's normal, and they're right if it's average.
Yeah.
That adults were only going to be 60, 65%
Yeah, you
water.
go way down, right.
That's right.
And
Now,
even though it's normal, if you get much below that, you die.
Well, that's what they're saying. You can only get a little bit worse off than that. And they think that that's okay. But
Right.
what I've seen, we started measuring hydration levels 14, 15 years ago. And what I realized was that it's actually possible to be much better hydrated than the average person is. In fact, I am much better hydrated than the average person is. Based on the instruments that we use to measure everybody, we've now measured more than 5,000 people. We see very, very few people who are above, a certain place, and yet we've seen it's entirely possible. It's possible to get to close to 80%.
And now what are
your
you
lean
doing?
tissues,
Electrical impedance or something like that? Is that what you're
Yes,
measuring?
exactly. It's electrical impedance, right? The presence of, for those people who aren't familiar with it, the presence of fat, which contains about 10% water, because it's very low in water, it impedes the flow of electricity. And so we send a tiny amount of electric current through the body. You don't feel it. But what happens is this very complex algorithm is able to measure, and we have to give it some information about you so that it knows roughly, where your waist is going to be. It can actually see that anyway because the rate of movement changes at a certain point. But anyway, it's able to calculate, they claim to be about 99% accurate. It's going to depend. There are situations that it's not going to work as well for some people, depending on specific issues. But
Is something that's appropriate to recommend for people at home to try to buy what you're talking about and check their hydration level?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, what the device gives you, the device will tell you what percentage of your body mass is water.
Okay.
Okay. Now, in fact, I'll tell you a quick story. I love stories because they really illustrate the point.
Makes it more personal, right?
So we had just moved to Central America 15 years ago next month, and our scale was damaged in the move. And so here we were. We had clients coming. We needed a scale.
Yeah.
And so I went out to look for one, and I came across for the first time a scale that was a bioimpedance scale. It used this technology. Now, it was a fairly inexpensive one. And, coming back to your question, your direct question, is this useful for people? What I found out is that very inexpensive bioimpedance devices tend to be somewhat unreliable. And I've had clients work with me via Skype who have one, and we're seeing these wild variations from one day to the next, where wild variations in hydration and body fat aren't possible.
Right.
It's not changing dramatically.
I've done tests on them that prove that they're completely crazy, and the inexpensive ones.
That's right. We have a device that was around $500 at the time we got it, and it's pretty consistent. Every once in a while we'll see something crazy, and then we'll check it again, and we'll usually, but it's pretty consistent. And it's interesting. We had a guy here about it's probably been now 8 or 9 years ago, but he lived somewhere in Maui, Hawaii. Yeah. He ran a clinic, maybe the wrong word. He wasn't a doctor, but what he did was he did all kinds of biological, physiological assessments, and an appointment with him was like 4 hours. and they tested everything that you could test. We were using the most expensive devices. So he had a bioimpedance device that cost something like $4,000 or $5,000, 10 times as much as ours. And he came in, and we put him on our scale. And he said, I gave him all the numbers afterwards. He said, he said, it's about the same thing I got last week on my device.
Yeah. Okay.
So it seems to work pretty well. But we don't see the crazy things we see with these inexpensive devices. So now there are places, in throughout North America, there are high-end health clubs, sometimes even pharmacies may have a bioimpedance device where you can pay to get measured. It's not all that expensive. So it's probably not worthwhile for the average person to own one of these things. But in terms of hydration, what the device gives you isn't so reliable. And I found this out when we bought this device. At the time, I had some staff members and interns who had all fasted with me. There were maybe 5 of them, and myself. And at the time, we were all relatively lean, and it was a younger group, with me being the exception. And everyone measured somewhere between 70 and 78% overall hydration. I'm sorry, in terms of what the scale gave us, because we hadn't figured this out yet. What the scale gave us was probably, I think it was somewhere between like 70 and 75% of the body mass was water. And I thought, okay, good. I mean, again, science tells us that as adults, we're going to be, in the 60s somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, good. So we open up, and we have all these clients coming in. We had 14 guest beds. We had 14 people we're measuring, and we're seeing people who are 50% water, and 60% water, and 45% water. Wow. And at one point, 35% water. Wow. And I'm thinking to myself,
how could they be alive? That's amazing.
That's exactly what I asked myself. How can they be alive? And what I finally figured out, so the problem is that none of the manufacturers really talk very intelligently about this, at least not the ones I've encountered yet. Maybe the very high-end devices understand it better. But what they're telling us is what percentage of body mass is water. Well, what I finally figured out on my own is that if body fat is only 10% water, roughly,
right,
and you've got someone. So I had a client here last session who is around 5'2" and weighed around 260 pounds.
Wow.
Okay? Which means that her body was overwhelmingly fat.
Yeah.
No, 65, 70%. I don't remember what the number was, but mostly fat. That's pretty much all she had was fat. So if fat contains almost no water and 75% of her mass is fat, her percentage of water in the body is going to be exceptionally low.
Okay, it's higher in the non-fat cells, but overall it's really...
That's right. Lean mass, again, my belief today is that lean mass should be somewhere approaching 80% water, lean tissue. Yeah. But that body fat's always going to be relatively low in water. It's just the nature of what it is.
Yeah.
And so if we have someone who has a lot of fat, we're going to see very low numbers. So we went through a couple devices before I really started to fully understand this. So at least I think I fully understand it. And I came up with a formula which allowed us to calculate or estimate. Really, it was really more of an estimate. I used a shorthand, and I realized a long time ago that there were going to be errors involved. But I started to realize just how grave they are, how significant the errors are when someone is that big. Because what we were doing was we were pretending, because the water and fat was so low compared to the water in lean tissue, we were just pretending to make it easy to calculate that all the water was in lean tissue.
Evenly distributed.
Yes, but all in lean tissue and none in fat. Well, if you've got someone, so you look like you're pretty lean. I haven't seen you with a shirt off, but you look like you're pretty lean. My body is probably 6 or 7% fat. Yeah. And so, and as I said, we had a group of relatively young, relatively lean people. Yeah. And so we were getting high percentages of water with the group before the clients showed up. Okay. The clients are average people. The average woman we measure is around 30% body fat. Mm-hmm. I'm working right now with women who are closer to 40% when they started. Yeah. The average guy we see is 25% body fat. And by the way, for those who don't know, we need to have about 2%, 2.5% is considered essential fat. We need that to survive.
Okay.
Now, I'm not suggesting anyone should be 2.5% fat.
That would be stressful, I think.
Well, it'd be stressful on the body, because if we lost anything, we'd now be, below the threshold to survive.
Yeah.
So there should be a cushion. I believe that as guys, we want to be between 5 and 12%. That being 5%, 5 is where an Olympic athlete tends to be, right in that range. It's very, very low. I was there for a long time. I have a little bit more body fat now than I did, for many, many years. But it's perfectly fine. I mean, you can be perfectly healthy with only 5% body fat. Now, what's going to happen if your 5% body fat is the average person out there who's used to seeing people who are overweight and obese almost exclusively is going to look at you and go, "You're way too skinny. You look like you're sick." When in fact, they don't really know what health looks like. There's really no advantage to carrying significantly more body fat than we need to.
Right.
I mean, they're animals, typically animals who need fat for insulation in very hot or very cold climates have a lot of body fat. Whales have a lot of body fat.
Or to sleep for the winter too. You need some.
Well, exactly. Yeah, if you're going to be going months without eating, you need to have body fat. A polar bear, polar bears don't hibernate.
But the bears down lower in temperate zones do.
Well, pregnant polar bears will spend 5 months underground, birthing their cubs and breastfeeding them while consuming nothing.
Okay.
Nothing at all. No food, no water. They come out and they're about half of their weight when they went in. And it's interesting because now the cubs have been feeding the whole time from birth, right? But mama bear has had nothing to eat for 5 months. And before she gets her first meal, they're going to hike 75 miles.
Wow.
On average, that's how far they have this little experience from their feeding grounds, on average.
Now, is the mother drinking water during that time?
She is not. She's not. And it brings up an interesting subject, because dry fasting has become all the rage over the last few years. I think we should perhaps talk about that.
I think that's really important, yeah.
Yeah, so the mother bear doesn't need to drink any water because of two things. One, she has a lot of body fat, and her body is consuming fat to produce fuel. We run on electricity. Bears are no different than us. I mean, bears are fairly closely related to us, genetically over 80%. Not as close as a dog or a monkey, but still, fairly close. I mean, in fact, I don't know if you're aware of this, we share over 95% of our DNA with a pig. Yeah. And some people I know are even closer than that.
That's right.
But what's happening? Pigs are very smart. Yeah, as we metabolize fat, the body produces perfect water, metabolic water. And so an animal who goes into a fast fully hydrated is going to generally be perfectly fine without drinking water. Yeah. But the problem is that most human beings are going into the fast already significantly dehydrated. As I said, we've measured more than 5,000 people. We have seen 3 people close to well hydrated. Most people are, the average person we see is around 15% dehydrated, based on what we estimate is where what we've seen is actually possible. Okay.
But if you go to bed and fast and you start out real dehydrated, you can't assume that the fat's going to break down and bring your hydration level up, right?
No. Well, so the problem is that the fat in the body will produce enough water as long as we're starting out hydrated. If we're already dehydrated, there won't be enough water from fat metabolism to hydrate us.
So are you saying polar bears start out hydrated before they go into
virtually every species in nature is well hydrated because they need to be to survive and to be healthy. Animals in nature, generally speaking, function at a much higher level of health and vitality than most human beings do.
Right.
Okay, and the reason why is because they don't let polar bears into McDonald's.
That's right.
And so they're forced to eat their natural diet. I mean, and what every species in nature does is they eat what they're intended to eat. And animals eating in nature, whether it's a carnivore who, and this is a little gory if you're not, but what a carnivore does typically is bite through the jugular vein of its prey, drink all the blood, tear it open and eat the water-rich internal organs, and then I don't know who taught them how to eat meat, but then they eat the meat without cooking all the water out of it and putting it between two dry pieces of bread. Okay?
Right, exactly.
They're eating living tissue, which is mostly water, so they're getting a high water content.
That's a real carnivore.
That's a real carnivore. Yeah. If you're watching this and you don't have the inclination to bite through the jugular vein of a cow, then maybe you shouldn't be eating beef.
Yeah. Well,
because that's the way.
One of the downsides of deciding to eat meat, which I used to do a lot when I was a little kid, is you must turn off a certain part of your empathy. Yeah. You can't have that, or you couldn't do it.
No, absolutely.
And real carnivores would all starve to death if they had it.
That's right. I mean, I think what happens is that, and first of all, yes, I mean, a carnivore isn't thinking in those terms. A carnivore, there's none in the room with me, but we have 6 cats here, including 3.
Yeah, you own some carnivores.
We own some carnivores. I don't own, but we have companions who are carnivores.
They're
and
living with you.
When a cat sees a bird or a butterfly, something you and I look at and we go, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Look at that. And they look at that and go, that looks like lunch.
That looks delicious. Yeah, exactly.
That looks delicious. That's their natural instinct to kill it.
They're not malicious at all.
No, of course not.
I don't think any carnivores are.
Of course not. They're not thinking, I want to kill something. They're thinking that looks like food, and that's what they do. Yeah. That's simply how they're set up. Right. You and I have, as you said, we have no natural instinct to do that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a separate piece. You're absolutely right, though. I mean, it's a really, really good point. We, of course, I mean, since we're talking about this, it turns out that we also have literally dozens of physiological and anatomical differences that separate us from animals that eat animals.
Yeah, our gut's too long and stuff like that.
Exactly. I mean, what happens when a human being eats animals is they develop far greater rates of cancer, heart disease, lower GI tract problems, dementia, and they live shorter. They age and die faster. Excess protein makes you age and die.
There's also a definite effect on emotional state.
No question about it. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's said that back in the days of the original Olympics, the Olympic athletes, we see these statues of these amazing, beautiful bodies, right?
Yeah.
That these athletes were fed primarily fruit.
That's interesting. Huh?
And that may sound surprising to people who haven't lived on fruit, but I can tell you, having done it now, living almost exclusively on fruit for coming up on 29 years, I mean, my body looks better at 59 than it did at 18. Literally.
Yeah.
I have tons. I mean, I'm strong. I'm fit. I wear the same size clothes I wore in high school. We don't have to get fat. We don't have to lose our muscle tone. Not at all. Honestly, I mean, I had 127 interns. We used to have a program that was 4 months long and 17 weeks. And the average person was probably in their 20s or 30s. There wasn't one of them who was ever able to keep up with me physically.
Right.
Not a single one. But anyway.
Yeah. I've seen too, if you get rid of the internal friction with the inefficient energy being used inside the body, and it starts working without that resistance, then your functionality goes up. Goes way up.
Absolutely dramatically. And this all ties back to hydration. But let's come back to ancient Greece, because the athletes were fed fruit, but the government saw fit to feed the soldiers meat. Why?
Makes them want to kill people.
Exactly. It makes them aggressive.
Yeah.
It makes them aggressive. That's exactly right.
Very useful. And interestingly enough, Loren, a lot of vegetarian and vegan health teachers don't want to ever look at this, but real science says you look at everything, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For a while, all of the coaches that I've looked at that train like the action heroes for the movies, they all feed them one particular diet, which is meat, cooked vegetables like broccoli is a main choice, and rice or something like that. And that's it.
Right.
No carbs except for the rice.
Right.
And, I mean, never any fruit, never anything fresh.
Tons of chicken, tuna.
Yeah, and for a while, those guys look incredible.
Exactly.
And then, but in the long run, it's not as good.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't last. It's not healthy at all. I mean, what they're trying to do, the reason, and they're eating something like anywhere between 12 and 15 times per day. Yeah,
like 5,000 to 7,000 calories, and then down to about 3 or 4 when they cut ready for the movie.
Exactly. And the idea is to build unnaturally large muscles.
Yeah.
And then to have them cut so they have all the definition. And
they're very functional for a while on that. But
yes.
Almost none of them can maintain it.
No, it's not really something that anyone can maintain or would want to. I mean, can you imagine? I don't know about you. I eat once or twice per day. I eat an average of 12 to 1,000 to 1,400 calories per day, depending on the day. And I can't imagine eating 15 times.
Well, those actors all complain. They say they feel so bad from being stuffed all the time.
Exactly.
They just want to get off of it,
Exactly. And anyone who looks at bodybuilders and thinks, wow, that's impressive, should know that they do the same basic thing with the cut as competition's increasing, but they also take very specific measures to dehydrate their bodies.
I know, which is really a bad idea.
That's what makes everything stand out the way it does, is they're completely dehydrated. I mean, bodybuilding is one of the least healthy things, hobbies or sports.
And that's aside from the drug issues, too.
That's right, exactly. Not even addressing steroid use, etc. But anyway, let's come back to dry fasting.
Yeah.
Because, so animals in nature will typically fast without drinking water. Now, it's interesting because I was talking about this. I was doing a full-day seminar in Gdansk, Poland, 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm talking about this very issue, and a man raises his hand. I said, yes. And he said, Loren, I'm a veterinarian. He said, when animals fast and they're dehydrated, they seek water. Okay? So animals, generally speaking, animals don't need water because they're eating their natural diet. They're not dehydrated.
Right.
They don't do all the things that, they don't consume diuretics. They don't consume alcohol, coffee, tea, sodas. They're not eating food that all the water's been cooked out of. I mean, you've probably at some point in your life eaten corn chips.
Oh yeah, I used to eat tons of those.
Okay, when corn chips go into your mouth, they're pretty dry, right?
Yeah.
How much water do you think they have? Any idea?
I don't know, 2%.
It turns out they're somewhere between 2 and 3% water.
Okay,
right. So when the corn chips come back out of your body, are they as dry as when they went in?
No, they'd be totally soaked because they wrapped everything in your body.
You better hope not.
Right. Yeah.
That'd be pretty uncomfortable.
That'd be very uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. It turns out that stool, on average, poop, is 75% water. Yeah. So something goes in 2 or 3% water and comes out 75% water. What does that mean?
It means
taking
it took
water
the
out of the body.
hydration from somewhere else, right?
Exactly. It's taking it from the body. And so the average meal, the meal with the average, I mean, again, let's come back to the recent statistic that said that I think it was over 61 or 62% of what the calories the average person consumes now in North America come from ultra-processed foods.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff, you go in to pay for your gas at the service station, you go inside, because their machine's broken, whatever. There's a rack of stuff in cellophane packages. That's ultra-processed food. That stuff doesn't contain any water.
No, and it's got paragraphs of ingredients.
Exactly, and words you can't even pronounce. It's all chemicals. Yeah. So, it's mostly processed, bleached, completely denatured flour and sugar and fat. And that's pretty much, that's what's in there. And then a bunch of chemicals, food colorings and preservatives. But so most people are eating most of the time foods that contain no water. This is what dehydrates people. Okay, and then what I found is, it's interesting because we'll see people come here and they're living on a fruitarian diet. Okay, it's a fruit-based diet, or maybe they're watching my videos, they're eating fruit and a salad most nights, And lettuce is 96% water.
Yeah.
Cucumbers are 96% water. Tomatoes are 92 or 93% water. I mean, salads are pretty high in water content.
Right.
And yet they're often the most dehydrated people here.
After eating that diet for a while?
After eating that diet for years.
So they would never imagine that they would be dehydrated.
They all think, in fact, there's a really scary trend that started. And that's people eating this way who think they don't need to drink because they're getting so much water.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the truth is, so today, especially now with this whole crazy pandemic, we're normally full for the last 8.5 weeks. Mm-hmm. Instead of having an average of, let's say, 30 or 32 times 8, so we would have had by now, 240, 250 person weeks of clients here.
Yeah.
Right? We've had 4 person weeks. We're only about 246 short.
Yeah.
And so paying the bills has gotten a little bit more challenging.
The authorities are really sorry they've destroyed the world economy.
No.
To do that.
Yeah, no problem. Right.
Yeah.
Crazy. So what I've done, what I did right away, the first couple weeks I thought, we're going to be in deep trouble here. And so I thought I'm going to have to take some action. What I did was I started being a little bit more present online and just reminding my followers, fortunately there's enough of them, hey, folks, if you're stuck and you can't go to work and you're in quarantine and you wanted to fast, this might be the perfect time to do it. I can work with you via Skype. Okay. Yeah. Yes, it'd be better to be here, but in the meantime, this is what we got. Right. And so instead of working with a maximum of 4 or 5 clients at a time, I've been working with an average of 10 to 13 clients at a time because I've got lots of free time on my hands right now with no clients here.
Yeah.
We have one. We had one personally. We have one person here now. We have 2 more starting this weekend.
Okay, but they're local, right? Which means
one is a Tico, one is a Costa Rican who's here, and I have 2 past clients, both of whom have volunteered with me. They're already in Costa Rica. One's here now, and one's not here now. They're going to start fasting together this weekend.
Good.
But no one can come into the country yet. That's supposed to change this weekend. We'll see what happens.
This weekend? Wow.
Yeah, they say their borders open on the 30th at midnight, so the 1st of July.
Okay.
Tourists can start coming back in.
Hopefully that happens.
I'm not holding my breath. This is the 4th date we've gotten so far.
Well, they're arranging the second wave right now.
Exactly. So what happens is people show up and they think, because I'm eating all this fruit and stuff, I don't need to drink water. Right? What I started to say was because I'm now spending an average of 6 to 8 hours a day talking on Skype or Zoom.
Right.
I'm sipping water through the day, but I still drink very little compared to most people. But there are people who don't drink any because they're convinced that eating a high water content diet, they're getting all they need. The problem is they have this giant sponge. According to a study in Denmark, between 5 and 10 kilograms, that's 11 to 22 pounds of old hard material in their digestive tract. And that stuff is sitting there like a giant sponge. You eat high water content foods like watermelon, it goes through the system, and that dry stuff starts to absorb a little bit of the water, and then you don't get very much water into your body. And you're already dehydrated.
So what, the water goes through then?
Well, if you're eating watermelon, that water is going to, typically what happens in a clean system, you eat the food, it goes into your stomach, goes into your small intestine, it goes all the way through the system because it's easier to move through 32 feet of digestive tract if it's high water content. It's easier to move it through, right? That stuff's going to flow.
Sure. Right.
It's going to flow down. So it moves through, and then when it comes to the transverse colon, which is, comes across the center of the belly, we absorb any excess water, bringing the water content down to about 75%. Okay, assuming we're eating fruit and salad, we're bringing it down to 75% water, and then we eliminate it. And so we're bringing water into the body. But if you've got a bunch of dry, hard material in your system, okay, and again, there are people who, so medicine says it doesn't exist, right? If God called me tomorrow and said, Loren, you're wrong about this, it doesn't exist, I'd say, thanks for your opinion. I've seen it.
But you've seen it, exactly.
With every client over the last 23 years, the only times we don't see it are when people refuse to drink enough water.
Okay, but if they're taking in a high water content diet, and there's this hard stuff absorbing it.
Yeah.
Well, once the hard stuff absorbs it, why would it keep being a problem?
Because we need to be resting long enough to actually break the stuff down. That doesn't happen when people are living their lives.
So it stays there.
Exactly.
But my question is, why could the same stuff that stays there keep absorbing more water indefinitely so that you never overcome the hydration issue?
That's easy, because you eat a bunch of watermelon and it absorbs as much water. In fact, there's a very common term in the raw food world. People call it melon belly. Melon belly happens when you've got a bunch of old hard stuff in your system. So as that stuff absorbs water, you feel bloated and it's painful. People like, I'll eat a whole small watermelon, no problem. In fact, I eat one about 5 times a week. It's usually my first meal of the day, breakfast at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But a lot of people can't do that because they start to feel pain. And if they wait about half an hour, what happens is the stuff starts to dry out again. And now they can eat some more and absorb some more water. And then they go to bed, and most people don't drink water all night long. So when they wake up in the morning, their mouth is dry. Sometimes their lips and their skin is dry. That's because they're dehydrated. Even though they had all that water.
last stage of noticing dehydration is when your mouth gets dry, right? It's actually happening before that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of subtle signs that most people aren't noticing. But anyway, it's drying out all the time because people aren't constantly keeping it hydrated. It's going to dry out again. The already dehydrated body is looking for a source of water. It's going to take that water from that old stuff sitting there and use it someplace more important. And so, we see this over and over again. People come, even people who have been, the longest I've seen so far was 22 years eating a high water content diet. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. It was a few years ago. We run sessions here. So we're between sessions, and I get an email from a woman that says, Loren, I'm visiting Costa Rica. I'm a big fan. I watch all your videos. For people who may not be familiar with me, I've got a YouTube channel with about 530 some videos. So she said, I've seen all your videos. I'm in Costa Rica. I'd love to see the center and to meet you in person. And I said, great. Why don't you come on Thursday around lunchtime, and we'll sit down together and share a watermelon. Okay? So she comes in, and she shows up, and I'm thinking, oh, what a sweet little old lady. She had a low-cut top on, and the skin was sort of hanging in folds on her chest. And she had tons of wrinkles on her face. And we sit down to eat, and we're talking, and I find out that I can't remember now, she was a month older or a month younger than me. Now, this was
I thought you were going to say she's 25 or something.
No, she was, so at the time I would have been 55 or 56, probably 56. She was the same age as me. Okay. But even today, my skin is largely unlined, unwrinkled, soft and supple. She had tons of wrinkles on her face.
Right.
And so we're getting ready to sit down, and she says to me, can I have a bowl? Everyone had a plate. There were 3 of us. It was the 2 of us and one of my volunteers. And we've got this big watermelon. And there's a cutting board and knife and watermelon, and everyone's got a plate. She says, can I have a bowl? I said, sure. I'm curious, what for? And she said, well, I chew the melon up, and I swallow the juice. I don't swallow the fiber. I said, why? And she said, well, I can't swallow anything solid anymore. I can only swallow the juice. I said, really? She said, yeah. She said, I think that's because I'm so well hydrated. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. Right. Why would being well hydrated make it hard to swallow? Okay, I said, and frankly, I said, and frankly, by that point we talked about age, and I said to her, with all due respect, if you'll forgive me, the wrinkles on your face, we're the same age, right? Right. That doesn't look like you're well hydrated. It looks like you're dehydrated. Yeah. Right. I can now look at someone if I know their age. I can see roughly how well hydrated they are simply by how they look. Because I've now measured the hydration of more than 5,000 people. Right. So I said to her, I think you're dehydrated. She said, no, I can't be dehydrated. I've been living on high water content fruits only for 32 years. Wow. And I said, well, that doesn't work to hydrate you if you haven't fasted to clean out. Oh, so I fasted. I've done a lot of dry fasting. I dry fast, regularly for 5 days at a time. I said, well, that only makes you more dehydrated.
Right.
Okay. In fact, a friend of mine who was in his early 70s died back in late November, early December, I forget. And I talked to him and said to him, don't do this. But he was one of these guys living on fruit, not drinking any water, and dry fasting regularly.
There are teachers that say to do that.
When he died, his wife and daughter posted on his Facebook page that he died. Eventually, what they realized was his whole body shut down. Everything started, all his organs started shutting down.
Yeah.
What the doctor said was the cause of this was scarring on his tissues, his kidneys. His kidneys stopped functioning properly from excessive scarring that happened as a result of dehydration.
Wow.
This is what's happening. So it's important because people say, well, dry fasting is 3 times more powerful than water fasting. Well, what's the evidence for that? Well, you move into ketosis in the first day instead of the third day. That's typically happens with water-only fasting. First day instead of third day. I said, okay, well, hang on. That doesn't mean it's 3 times more powerful. First of all, what is ketosis? Well, that means you're detoxifying. No, it doesn't. Being in ketosis means your body's running on ketones.
Which come out of fat, right?
That's right. As we metabolize fat, we produce So we metabolize fat, we don't produce any sugar. And normally the body runs on glucose.
Right.
So when we're fasting, what happens is, first of all, the body, in the first stages, there's several different stages in the fasting process. And we start out by looking for sugar, glucose, in our digestive tract. Yeah. Once we've depleted that, the body goes to the glycogen stores in the liver. Now, we also store glycogen in the muscle. Right. We don't use muscle glycogen for fasting. Okay, well, why not? Well, think about the polar bear. She's got to walk 75 miles. If she used up all the fuel she had and all the fat she had for fuel and all the muscle glycogen, what's going to power her 75-mile hike?
So you come out of a long fast with muscle glycogen still there?
You do. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's good.
Yeah, I suppose it's possible that in certain circumstances that's going to start to get depleted too if someone goes a little too far. Mm-hmm. And we might actually do that sometimes here, where we have somebody who starts very, very lean and sick enough that they need to fast long enough to heal. Invariably, they're going to be fine, but they're going to be super weak at the end.
Yeah.
Okay? And there's a number of reasons why those people get weak. It's okay. We know what that looks like. It feels like it's perfectly fine. We have people sometimes who get so weak that walk into the bathroom from their bed is difficult.
Well, and originally you weren't letting those people fast, right? When you didn't know that it would be okay.
Yes, in the early on, 23 years ago. First of all, when I started fasting people, I only fasted people for relatively short periods of time, and only people who weren't very sick. Yeah. And then as I got more and more experience and started to see what was possible, we started doing much longer fasts. Our average fast, as I said, is now 26 days. Right. We have one real competitor in North America. They're in California. Their average fast is 10 or 11 days. It's a complete. It takes 10 or 11 days for the body to get to the deepest part of the process.
Well, and they put people on cooked food after the fast too, so that's a big difference.
They do. Yeah, they do. They don't. They can't really understand the process and optimizing health in the way that we do here because they've never achieved it themselves. Yeah. It's a whole different thing. But people say, well, it's much safer. They're much safer. Yeah, true, absolutely true. In the same way that staying home is safer than walking down the sidewalk. Yeah,
sure.
Because you could get hit by a branch of a falling tree, or you could get hit by a car. If you stay home, you're probably safer. If you go there, you're going to be very safe because they're going to break your fast as soon as your body is actually doing anything. As soon as your vital signs are outside the normal range, your fast is over. And they have to be outside the normal range as the body heals. Right, sometimes. Right. But anyway, so dry fasting, what's happening is the reason the body moves into ketosis. So first of all, being in ketosis doesn't mean you're detoxing. It just means your body's running on ketones. Okay? And it's running on ketones because it has no source of sugar. And so it has to. And the reason that people go into ketosis faster isn't because it's more powerful. It's because going into ketosis means the body's producing water. If you're severely dehydrated, your body is going to say, okay, screw the normal process. I need water now.
Before food, yeah.
How do we get that? We get that by breaking down fat.
Yeah,
so it goes.
interesting.
But if the body is in danger because it's severely dehydrated, so much so that it doesn't go through the normal process, it jumps into ketosis faster.
Yeah.
Is it going to have the energy to do a lot of detoxification?
Right.
I don't think so. In fact, when we think about the process of detoxification, we're eliminating toxins from the body through 5 primary channels. There's really one primary channel. The rest are secondary, but they have different degrees of effectiveness.
Yeah.
Most toxins in the body, as you may be aware, are processed through the kidneys, or out-processed through the kidneys, right? Our kidneys, we have 2 kidneys. They're filtering our blood, and they filter the blood on average 60 times per day. All the blood gets filtered through the kidneys. So roughly every 24 minutes or so, if my math is correct, quick math, we're all the blood's being filtered. And what happens in the kidneys is we're filtering out all the garbage. We're also filtering out excess nutrients. More, we have more of something that we want, but more than we need. The kidneys are keeping the blood in balance the way it should be.
Yeah, chemically. Okay?
That's right.
And it's amazing that you don't have to replace the filter element every week or something.
It's incredible what happens in a properly handled living organism. It's healing itself. But if we abuse the kidneys, if we're dehydrated, we're going to create issues.
Right.
So the kidneys are how most toxins leave the body, because most toxins are dumped into the bloodstream. Right? We're taking toxins from throughout the body, organs, mostly in body fat, but from body fat, from organs, from muscles.
You're talking about during a fast, right?
All the time. But
all the time. Okay.
But especially while fasting, the process of detoxification is dramatically faster. And this is why medicine says, and the experience is for most people with hypertension, medicine says you can't heal. You're on drugs the rest of your life.
Yeah.
We have 100% success healing more than 400 people.
Interesting, they haven't noticed that yet, isn't it?
Well, they don't have any intention of noticing.
Right.
As you know, the medicine.
Well, they already know it's impossible, so why would you want to notice it?
Exactly. Well, and I mean, look, we've. If you're probably familiar with Quackwatch. Quackwatch.
Right. Well, the higher levels don't want to notice it because they want to defend their system, and it's got all kinds of deeper agendas connected to it. But the average doctor doesn't notice it because they've been taught it's impossible. Why do you want to waste your time noticing what's impossible?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I believe that most doctors are good people who want to help, but they've been taught a system that simply doesn't work. It's never going to work.
And they think that memorization was learning.
That's right.
When they picked it up.
Exactly. But anyway, this is what's going on. So this is why people move into ketosis faster. Now, what's interesting here is that I said earlier, it's often true because we have a lot of people here, having lived on a fruitarian diet now for nearly 29 years, and by the way, without a day sick, and functioning very, very well. I'm pretty well known in those circles, and so we get a lot of those people here. It's not unusual to have out of 30 people that might be here at one time, we might have 15 people who live or have attempted to live on a fruitarian-based diet.
Wow, that's a big percentage.
Yeah, and often the most dehydrated person is not somebody eating conventionally, it's a fruitarian. The only time we have somebody more dehydrated than that is when we have someone here who's been regularly dry fasting.
Okay.
Invariably, the dry fasters who are here are the most dehydrated of everyone.
I don't know, something just intuitively told me don't dry fast.
No,
absolutely. I can't think of any benefit from it.
Well, things that are like, I've never tried heroin. I've tried a lot of other substances growing up in the 60s and 70s. Heroin always scared the crap out of me. Not going to go there. But, anything, I'll try things that I think I'm not going to die from, and I know my body well enough. I've tried dry fasting 3 times, 4 days each time. It wasn't even a little bit more powerful or beneficial. It was less powerful and less beneficial than water fasting. But so many people don't understand. Now, there are 2 studies that confuse people. Okay? There are 2. I've only found 2 studies. There's no other science at all to support dry fasting or any of its claims. But there are 2 studies, and one of them says that dry fasting reduces inflammation much faster than water-only fasting. And the other one said that it reduces mucus, excessive mucus in the body, faster than water-only fasting. Okay?
Can I guess why those might be?
Absolutely.
Because I didn't ever hear that, but inflammation is actually a process that takes energy. That's a healing response.
Exactly.
And if you have a higher priority, you have to drop it.
Well, and you're absolutely right. It's exactly dead on point. And there's more to it than that too. Inflammation is happening. What is the body doing when there's inflammation? What's actually happening? What's occurring in the body? Let's say you injure your knee.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a bunch of things that's happening. If it's a joint, the body's actually partly trying to immobilize the joint.
That's right.
Which
inflammation does successfully.
It's also bringing more blood cells there. It's doing a lot of things.
It's bringing blood and lymph to the area.
Yeah.
Okay? When someone is significantly dehydrated, is the body able to bring blood and lymph to the area?
No, in fact, if you cut water, you're cutting available blood.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly what happens. Mucus is no different. Mucus is 97% water. So if there isn't enough water in the body because the body is severely dehydrated, there will be less mucus production.
Are they talking about normal mucous membrane or congestion?
Well, I think they're talking about congestion because the mucous membrane, for instance, in the stomach, most people can't feel that. They don't know what that feels like. They have no way of knowing that that's going on. But we're talking about the production of mucus to encapsulate and help us eliminate toxins.
Well, that's a healing process. It's positive. It doesn't have the energy to do it.
No, exactly. But this is very well misunderstood. There's a folk hero named Arnold Ehret. In fact, the first book I read on fasting was a book called Rational Fasting by Arnold Ehret.
I've read those. Right.
And, Arnold Ehret, I think, was a pioneer in many ways, but he was not right about everything he said. And he says that, first of all, he talks about mucus-producing foods. Now, let's be absolutely clear about this. Foods don't produce mucus. The body produces mucus. Right. And the body produces mucus on purpose in intelligent response to certain foods. So the mucus isn't the problem. It's actually part of the solution. The problem is whatever it is that someone's consuming or doing that's creating the need for the body to create mucus.
Yeah.
It's so important to understand that the mucus is not the problem, it's part of the solution. So, again, dry fasting, the body isn't able to produce this excess mucus that it needs to produce, and so it's not there. And people feel better because they don't have the symptom.
It's very similar to, or analogous to, the body trying to heal an inflamed artery with cholesterol.
Exactly.
It's a patch. It's trying to make a Band-Aid for it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's right. It's there's actually many analogous situations in the body. People don't understand, think that it's a problem. The body's doing what it needs to do. Here's one that often shocks people: osteoporosis. Right. Yeah, so if you've got if you've got listeners who are over 55 or 60, if they're female especially, they've probably been warned that they've got to be careful, and they've probably been told to consume a lot of dairy products or to take a calcium supplement.
The supplements have huge amounts of calcium that they're giving.
That's right. And calcium, by the way, in excessive quantity is quite harmful to the body.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
We should not need to take in large quantities of calcium. The problem is, let me ask you a question. A simple math question. I just want to test your math skills. We have a bathtub that holds 100 gallons, okay?
Right.
We turn the water on all the way. We get 10 gallons a minute. How long will it take to fill up the bathtub?
If it stays the same rate, 10 minutes.
Are you sure?
10 gallons a minute for 100 gallons?
Seems simple enough, right? Most people would agree with you. What I forgot to mention is that the stopper is lost. It's an old bathtub. You have to stick it.
So it takes forever.
You never fill up the bathtub. And this is what's going on with osteoporosis, is the calcium is leaving the body faster than you can assimilate it. You can't fill up the bathtub. Yeah, and why does it leave the body? So here's the interesting thing. Our blood pH needs to be in a narrow range between 7.35 and 7.45. In fact, there's a condition that develops if it moves too far out of the range. I always forget what it's called. Oh, yeah, death.
Right. I've heard of that, too.
Right. Yeah, you've probably heard of this. So
there are people drinking water that's like 9 or more.
I know. It's insane. Yeah, it's a good point. Alkaline water is a scam. Water in nature is between pH 6 and 8 most of the time, and that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine if it's slightly acidic. It's no problem.
Yeah.
People drink coffee, tea, orange juice. Orange juice is a pH like 3.2.
Right.
Apple juice is no different. I mean, most fruit juices are very, very acidic, much lower. And if you're not familiar with the logarithmic scale, you should know that pH 6 is 10 times more acidic than pH 7, and pH 5 is 100 times more acidic than pH 7, and pH 4 is 1,000 times, and pH 3 is 10,000 times more acidic, and that's what people are drinking all the time. Coffee, tea, alcohol, sodas. These things are all in the pH 3, 3.5 range.
It gets buffered with no problem.
Exactly. So drinking pH 6, not a problem whatsoever. It's perfectly fine. But anyway, what's happening is, go back to what we talked about earlier, people are eating 96% of their calories in North America from ultra-processed foods and animal products. So everything that we consume affects the body's pH, the blood's pH. Everything has an effect. Foods are categorized as being either alkaline-forming or acid-forming. Unfortunately, all processed foods and animal products, 96% of what the average person's consuming now, are acid-forming foods. And what that means is they tend to lower the body's pH. So if every time you eat a meal, your pH tends to drop, you're kind of screwed, because if your pH has to be in a blood pH in a very narrow range and it tends to drop, the body has to find some way to buffer that. What is it?
That's why they're drinking all that alkaline water, right? Trying to fight that.
Exactly. It doesn't work. Remember that the pH of the substance does not determine the effect it has on the body. Right. So oranges are not as acidic as orange juice. Something happens when you extract it, but oranges are still relatively acidic. They have a lot of citric acid. Yeah. But they're alkaline-forming foods. They're not acid-forming. All fruits are alkaline-forming foods. All fruits and leafy green vegetables are alkaline-forming. Almost everything else is acid-forming.
And of course, it's not the fruit that's forming alkaline. It's the body that's using it to do that, right?
Exactly. It's about the minerals in the food and the effect they have on the pH.
Okay.
So the body will become more acidic or more alkaline depending on what we're consuming. Yeah. But the point is that if the average person is getting 96% of their calories from acid-forming foods, every time the average person has a meal, the pH tends to drop, and the body has to find a way to buffer that. And how it does that is it takes calcium and other minerals from the bones on purpose, because the alternative is death.
And it takes it out of the teeth also.
Exactly. Yeah. But what I want people think, osteoporosis, my body is broken somehow. No, your body is so intelligent that it says, okay, you know what? I don't really want to do this, but having more porous bones is probably better than being dead.
It's evaluating priorities.
And it's making intelligent choices.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about it. And, medicine says just eat a ton of calcium. Eating a ton of calcium is bad for you, A, and B, it doesn't work because you can't absorb it fast enough anyway. Yeah. It doesn't do anything. What we need to do is balance the body. Fasting is a great way to do that. Yeah. Eat properly so we're not contributing by acidifying the body. Do weight-bearing exercises and get sunlight, and we can rebuild bone density. Yeah, exactly. It's not difficult to do.
So just in general, what are some of the other major topics connected to fasting and health, like hydration, that we haven't mentioned that you think are really important?
Let's see. Hydration is kind of, for me, is kind of a big one, because what I've noticed. We can talk about toxicity, right? Because most people are fasting to detoxify, and I think it's fair to say that. Well, let me say it this way: natural hygiene has always taught that there's only one disease.
Right.
There's different expressions of it, but the one disease is toxemia. It's a toxic body. What I realized when I started delving deeper and deeper into this issue with hydration is that toxemia occurs, I believe, of course, because people make poor choices. But if people are making poor choices and they start out hydrated, at least for a while, the body is able to detoxify on an ongoing basis in real time, because that requires water. Each of the channels of elimination, not just the kidneys, the colon. If stuff is hard and dry, it's not leaving the body. At least you hope it's not, right?
Right.
It's got to be hydrated. Mucous membranes through the skin, through the breath, all depend on water. And when the body's dehydrated, there's very little detoxification, which is why people dry fast and they say, I feel much better when I dry fast. It's because nothing is happening. Of course you're going to feel better.
Right.
You know, the point isn't to feel good in the moment. The point is to actually allow the body to do what it needs to do. And it's interesting because we see these people. I don't know why. I guess they come here. There must be some realization that they're not getting all the benefit they think they are. But they often come here and they're a bit defensive because they know how I feel about dry fasting. They say, I've already done a lot. I've dry fasted. And they start drinking water based on my protocol. And guess what? It turns out they haven't really done anything except dehydrate themselves. As soon as they start to get hydrated, all the mucus shows up. All the inflammation's still there. The body is still waiting to do what it's always wanted to do. It just didn't have the ability to do it. It's going to do it. It's going to do it then. And they finally see they didn't accomplish anything except putting themselves in serious danger.
Right.
But so hydration is important because, you know, it really is. I mean, the average person's body is quite toxic. People would be shocked if they had any idea just how toxic the body is. There was an amazing study. It was probably 20 years ago now. And they took a statistically significant sample size in North America, and they looked for 75 persistent environmental toxins. And so we're talking about some of the most toxic chemicals ever invented, PCBs, dioxin, you could probably think of many others, pesticides, etc.
Sure.
So, and most of these substances had been outlawed for use in North America decades ago. Okay, but they're persistent. They don't break down easily. So what they found was that the average person that they looked at was carrying more than 50% of these substances in their body in measurable quantity. That's 38 or more of these incredibly toxic substances were in measurable quantity in the average person's body.
Right.
So people, sometimes people say, well, how toxic can we be? Pretty toxic.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing they may not realize is that some of those toxins are dangerous at parts per billion.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. By the way, one of the reasons, some people think, well, I think, in fact, I might be stepping on some toes here, but some people think that fish are safe, and they'll cite the fact that the water they're coming out of has only, it's safe because it's only 1 part per billion, not realizing that fish breathe, they extract oxygen from the water passes through their gills, and toxins in the water concentrate in their flesh up to 100,000 times the concentration in the water. Yeah,
they bioaccumulate.
Exactly. And so it can be very dangerous. And the same thing's true. It's interesting. The average person eating an animal product-based diet, still eating flesh and dairy products, etc., thinks that they're safe, especially, if they're thinking, I don't have to worry so much about pesticides because I'm not eating that much produce. Not realizing that the vast majority of the average person's pesticide load comes from eating animal products where the pesticides have bioaccumulated. Yeah,
and most of the animals are raised on chemical feed.
Exactly.
Which bioaccumulates.
Exactly. So that's where the problems are actually coming from. Yeah. But anyway, so toxicity is a huge issue. But what I believe is true, and the reason I believe. So let's back up a little bit. I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, I'd finished giving a lecture in a huge auditorium in London, England, and it was at a university there. And as I'm walking up through this full crowd, a woman stops me and says, "Loren, that was really fascinating. Thank you. I tried fasting once, though, and it didn't work for me." I said, "Really, what happened?" She said, "It made me sick." and of course, Richard is chuckling because he knows that sick means the body's detoxifying. That's what we expect to happen.
Yeah, they did great.
That's what we expect to happen, but not everyone understands that. And so when the body is showing symptoms, it means it's detoxifying. When it's unable to detoxify, there won't be any symptoms. And so what I've realized is that when we get the body fully hydrated, we get the body clean, there's no toxicity, we keep it hydrated. If we encounter toxicity, for me it might be, so I travel and speak, I'm in a city usually to speak, I'm going to encounter air pollution, etc. My body will detoxify, but immediately, quickly, in real time, it doesn't build up in the body.
And it dilutes it too.
That's right. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but I forget the percentage. There's an inordinately high percentage of people who get sick when they go on vacation.
Yeah, because the stress goes down and they can afford to get sick, right?
Exactly. The stress goes down, the body now has the energy to detoxify that it didn't have before. So when the body gets clean enough and we keep it hydrated, it's always detoxifying in real time and stuff never builds up.
Yeah.
Okay. What occurred to me is that the toxicity in the average person's body is at least partially because of dehydration.
Yeah.
That hydration is the most critical piece. And what I realized is the only way we can get hydrated is to get all the garbage out of the body through fasting long enough and properly. Mm-hmm. Once we do that, then we follow an optimal diet, then it becomes easy. And this is why I'm now 33 years without a day sick.
Yeah, which is normal. In my definition, it's normal.
Exactly.
In your definition, it's completely abnormal.
Completely abnormal, right. In fact, that reminds me, I got off track an hour ago. I was saying to you how this woman said to me that raw vegans are strange people, right?
Yeah.
And I thought for a second, and I said, you're absolutely right. Now, I can say that because I'm a raw vegan. Right?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
They can't say you're racist against raw vegans or something.
Exactly. Not at all. And I said, you're absolutely right. And that's because you have to be a bit strange to not really care about what other people think about what you're doing.
Well, not only not to care about that, but not to care if somebody says, wow, I've got this incredible tasting thing here.
Right.
And you don't care about that either.
Yeah. You go, no, I mean, listen, I think a lot of people imagine that it must get boring. You probably don't get to enjoy your food.
Yeah.
And I can tell, remember, folks, first of all, I'm in Costa Rica, and I've lived here in Central America now for 15 years.
Yeah.
And so I've got 135 varieties of fruit growing on my site so far. We've got more coming soon. If our cash flow were a little higher, we'd have the trees here already, but we're waiting to finish paying off the order of trees. We've got some 400 trees coming, and more varieties we don't. More varieties we don't have. It's very exciting. We before all this happened, while we still had cash flow, we closed a new loan and we bought the farm next door. So we were sitting on 10 acres. Yeah. Now we're sitting on 37 acres.
Yay, that sounds great.
It's very cool. And we have about space that was that's still pasture on that farm. They had dairy cattle. So most of the land is pasture, which means we've got space for about 7,000 trees, if I'm counting correctly.
Wow.
Like that. But in any case, I sit down to have a meal, and my typical experience, of course, there's watermelons that aren't that tasty, but my typical experience is I sit down, and I sit down to eat watermelon or papayas or mangoes or pineapples or whatever it might be, and I bite into it and I think, oh my God, this is the most delicious thing I've ever eaten.
Yes, and what's interesting too about that is that you don't have to eat 1,000 different things to feel that way.
That's
if
right.
your body's clean and the food's good, it could be the same one you just ate, and it's like that.
Exactly right. In fact, the truth is, I'm excited because we have all these varieties of fruit. Yeah. But we've planted these trees over the last 3 or 4 years, which means most of them are not bearing yet. So our staples here, it's interesting. Costa Rica, this beautiful tropical country, they could grow so many things. People here eat rice and beans every single meal. They add some other things, but it's the same. Fruit, they'll have a mango tree. Most of the mangoes rot on the ground. They might have a couple mangoes a week. Where I'll sit down and I'll have 5 mangoes for lunch. They barely touch it. And so if you go to the fruit markets, you'll find watermelons, mangoes, pineapples, papayas, one type of banana, a plantain, avocados and tomatoes and red peppers and a few things. I didn't
ask you before, in Costa Rica, how's the organic status? Do you know that stuff hasn't been ever fertilized or sprayed, or can you tell?
It's difficult still to buy everything organic. There are some providers. We do our best to get as much organics as we can. Now, fortunately, many of the things that are staples for us here, like bananas and avocados and watermelons and papayas, are on the clean 15 list. They're things that use very little pesticide spray most of the time anyway. It's good, yeah. And of course,
because there are GMO papayas and stuff like that.
Not here. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
In Hawaii,
Hawaii and places.
The strawberry papayas from Hawaii are pretty much all, unless they're organic. You can't be organic if you're GMO. So
right.
There are organic ones there. I've been there, and that's all I'll buy.
But you're going to have to grow all your own stuff to be perfect.
Well, that's the plan. The plan is to grow everything ourselves, and we're moving in that direction. In another probably 4 or 5 years, we will probably be largely self-sufficient. I'm sure we're going to want avocados all year long. We can only grow them maybe 5 or 6 months a year here.
Okay.
They're mangoes the same thing. We can buy mangoes from Costa Rica all year long, but we can only grow them here.
Where are they coming from that you get it the rest of the year?
Well, it's a tiny country, but there's tremendous variation in climate because of elevations, etc. And so there are places where they're always able to grow some of these things.
Okay.
There are times a year where mangoes are super expensive because they're hard to get, but they're always available. We pretty much always have them.
But you've got other things available at that time too, right?
Absolutely. I can literally pick fruit here every single day of the year.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. Wow.
Bananas, papayas, pineapples. We're harvesting all year long. Mulberries off and on throughout the year. Passion fruits off and on throughout the year.
And you mentioned bananas. Most people have never tasted a banana, right?
No,
because
that's true.
They pick them green like all the rest of the stuff now.
That's right.
And months later, after being, if they're organic, they're not gassed, but they are really unripe until you let them sit around.
Yeah, and I might be wrong about this. I hope you're right. My understanding is organic bananas can indeed be gassed because they're gassing them with something that the fruit produces anyway. So it's not considered. It's not. It's the fruit,
ethylene something.
It's ethylene gas and the ethylene dioxide. The fruit produces it as it ripens, but when they pick it too early, it doesn't happen. And so what they do is they gas it to produce the gas that the fruit should have produced if it had been picked at the right time.
Well, organic standards are still better than just openly poisoned, but they're really degenerated.
They have.
The fact that they've now in the U.S. they've approved hydroponic growing and make believe it's organic is really.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize hydroponics could not be called organic.
You can't tell from the numbers on the label.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're going to move all the tomatoes into hydroponic that are organic because you can stack them and make multiple times as much money.
Exactly. Yeah. This is what it's come down to. I remember years ago we used to get our bananas. We buy our food many years ago from a little co-op.
Yeah.
And they sold both organic and conventional. It's interesting because there were times in my life, my income has done this. I've been self-employed.
Yeah.
There have been difficult times. And there were times when I didn't know how I was going to pay the mortgage. I still bought exclusively organic produce.
Yeah.
I realized that if I lost my house, which I eventually did do, if I lost my house, I could always get another house.
Yeah, it's hard with the body, though, if you lose
If I lost my health again after losing it once already, I wasn't so sure I'd be able to get it back.
Yeah.
So I figured, the quality of the food that goes in my body is the most important thing. When I was in the U.S., with the exception of a monthly durian feast, I never saw organic durian in the U.S., we bought 100% organic produce in the U.S. for 15 years. Here, I can't do that yet. But hopefully within a few years, we'll be 95% self-sufficient.
So tell people what a real banana is like.
Well, it's interesting because 20 years ago, I had my first trip to Costa Rica looking for a site. Yeah. I rented a little cottage on the Caribbean. I was with a woman I was dating, and the owner was an American carpenter who retired, built his house, then built 3 little cottages right on the beach. And we were right on the beachfront. He had 10 acres of fruit trees, and he said, I said to him, I only eat fruit inside. I said, help yourself. Go ahead and just pick whatever you want. Here's a machete. Help yourself. It was heaven. It was the first time I was experiencing this sort of thing. He came to us later that afternoon with a big bunch of green bananas. And I said to him, so in the U.S., I'm used to buying green bananas before. I was still living there at the time, right, 20 years ago. And I'm used to buying green bananas that you buy them, you wait a month, 2 months. Sometimes they never ripen, right?
Yeah.
These green bananas, I said to him, thanks, but we're only here for a week. He said, they'll be ripe in 3 days. I said, no way. He said, yeah, way. And of course, he was right. He knew better than I did. But I'm also thinking to myself, I've got fresh coconuts and Suriname cherries and papayas and all passion fruits and all these things I don't normally get to eat. why would I eat bananas when I can get bananas at home all the time? And then the bananas got ripe, and I thought, well, I'll try one. And it was a Cavendish banana, the same variety that you see in your grocery stores in the U.S. Yeah. It was a completely different thing. Completely different. And that's because they were picked. You don't have to let them turn yellow, but you have to wait until they're actually fully formed on the plant. Then you can cut them. Yeah. In fact, we do that here because if we leave them on the plant, then the birds and bats eat them. Right? So we have to bring them inside. Yeah. But we pick them at the right time. 3 days later, they're perfectly ripe. And they're amazing. It's a completely different experience.
Yeah. I suspect they have a lower starch content.
Absolutely.
When they ripen normally.
No question. Absolutely. And by the way, I mean, I'm guessing a lot of people listening have probably only seen one or two varieties of bananas. If you count plantains, there's two, maybe two or three more than that.
They have a few of the smaller ones,
We have 16 varieties here so far, but there are hundreds of varieties of bananas on the planet. Wow. And my goal is to collect as many of them as possible.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, maybe we'll get to do some more chapters.
I'd be happy to. I think I mentioned briefly the first time we were together 2 weeks ago that we were creating this big project that included an enormous permaculture-based fruit farm.
Right.
And if you're interested in talking about that, I mean, it's a really fascinating.
Yeah, project. And permaculture doesn't have to involve eating fish. I mean, most people think
it doesn't. Yeah.
Well, they have this diagram, of the fish and the greenhouse and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, we practice veganic permaculture, so we don't use any animal products.
So now, just explaining what that is might be a good show too.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Be happy to do that if you want to do it.
Yeah. Neat. Okay, well, hold on and we'll say goodbye in the break here and hopefully have another episode soon.
Sure.
Okay, there goes Loren Lockman. Great person, I think, who's actually living the philosophy that he learned not as a theory, but by his own experimentation over decades. And probably the preeminent place I know about, there's one other in Australia that sounds pretty good, but they're not exclusively fasting, and Loren's place is. So if you want to learn more about that, tanglewoodwellnesscenter.com is the place to go to read more about what he's doing. And also, he's got, at this point anyway, they haven't been taken down. It's got hundreds of videos on YouTube and probably on other channels, but for sure on YouTube, because I've watched a lot of them. They're really good. And he's got many of them where he's teaching groups about fasting and starting, breaking the fast. How you start to eat after that is really important. A lot of super educational material. And he mentioned before or during the show, I don't remember which it was, that if you want to write to info at tanglewoodwellnesscenter.com, he'll send you a free ebook about what he's doing there, and it's a lot of interesting educational material, and the price is really good because it's $0. And I would think if this is a subject you're interested in, you'd probably want to look at his ebook. It's his view after so many years of supervising water fasting of how to thrive on a raw vegan diet, and he's finding it's working great. He's, as far as I know, not taking supplements. He's one of the only raw vegan people that I know of who's seems strong and functional at age 59 or 60, and no supplements, and just doing what he teaches, which is really admirable, it seems to me. So that's, you ask for the ebook at info@tanglewoodwellnesscenter.com. What else do I want to mention? He said he was available for coaching you at home through fasting if anybody wants to do that. And I would think that if you go to their site, use the contact form and email them if you have questions about the service that they do and about how much it costs, which I actually don't know at this point. Could be a good thing to find out about, and he's got more experience in doing that than anyone else that I personally know about, especially the longer fasts, which I actually don't know of any other place in the world right now that does so many long fasts as he does for the last, many years. And it looks like a beautiful place. So he was saying, that they expect to open the borders of Costa Rica, which has gone along with this fake pandemic, just like the U.S. and Europe and the U.K. and all that. But hopefully they're going to relent. I don't know if they will, because the rulers are engineering a second wave so they can lock everybody down again. From what I've seen so far, not from an actual new virus or anything like that. They just say, well, we have all these new numbers. It's a new emergency. It's a second wave. You go back in your house and wait for the vaccine or something along that line, and wait for the contact tracers. They're very nice, and they'll go talk to you and see if you're okay and take your temperature. And, if you're locked in your house in the second wave, they'll have an easier time doing that and asking you for all the contact information for all your friends so they can go and do the same thing to them. And this is the precursor for something not nice. And hopefully Costa Rica does open up its borders. And if they do, then people can start going and being at Loren's place in person. And maybe they'll be able to even find an airplane to ride on that doesn't require the masks. That would be really good. There's a lot to learn about the masks and about the whole fake pandemic. Many interesting articles on it and videos as well are posted at lostartsradio.com. And we have shows on Saturday as well. This is a Sunday show, but we have Lost Arts Radio Live. That's a Saturday afternoon show. And that one's different. It's usually specifically about something related to current events in America, where we're sitting, or in other parts of the world. Things that are beneficial to understand and know about. That's 4:30 Saturday afternoon Pacific time every week, or 7:30 Eastern U.S. time. And you're welcome to tune into that. It's totally free. And all this stuff is, free. And if you want to help us stay on the air, even though we don't run commercials or anything, if you think what we're doing is useful, please consider contributing to what our work is doing and keeping us operating. That there are donate buttons at lostartsradio.com on the website, and also on the nonprofit site that runs everything that we're doing. That's lostartsresearchinstitute.org, and also a Subscribestar page at subscribestar.com/lostartsradio. And then if you want to get more into an interactive, mutually supportive forum that we meet in, that's less censored, less subject to censorship, where we can just talk about anything and share information freely. And it's all geared to what you want to discuss. And I can talk freely about the last 50 years of research that I'm still doing on health protocols, and not just fasting, but dietary things, and sunlight and exercise and grounding and sleep, and mental, emotional aspects of healing. Some tools that I've developed over the last many years that help with expanding consciousness, and that makes the physical changes easier. But it's driven by whatever you guys want to talk about. You're welcome to participate in that. There are small dues, but they go to our nonprofit to help keep us going. And you can access that via the page at planetaryhealingclub.com. planetaryhealingclub.com. I'm personally inviting you if you think that that's something you'd be interested in. Otherwise, watch for our Sunday shows and any extra videos we get to put out. We've got news articles coming out every day on lostartsradio.com, all free. You might find those interesting to kind of keep up with the quick developments that are happening in the world right now. And other than that, the bottom line message is, whether you use any of our services or not, take care of yourself. Learn as much as you can. Don't trust conventional authorities that are in charge of our so-called education. It's mostly the opposite of real education. That's going to be in your hands. Taking care of your health and your body is totally your project. And if you use any other so-called experts, they work for you. So in order to be a good boss and decide which ones to use and what to do on your own, you need to learn as much as you can. And then take care of yourself, because it's the best service you can do to everybody else. And hopefully we'll work together and get this whole situation right now in the world turned around. I think it's not too late. We can still do it. So have a great week. Appreciate all the time you're spending with us. Thank you. Any feedback you want to have on the shows or suggested guests or questions or anything like that, you're always welcome to email richard@lostartsradio.com. And I appreciate you all very much. Have a good week. We'll see you here next time. Thank you.
Introducing Lost Arts Radio on subscribestar.com. Just go to subscribestar.com/lostartsradio to find our rewards program, offering 10 different giving levels starting at just $5 a month. We offer incredible value for any rewards level, from extra monthly interview videos not available publicly to subscription-based Planetary Healing Club videos once, twice, or 3 times a month, to private counseling sessions with Lost Arts Radio host Richard Sachs, to tech help with me, Doug Diamond. We even have one option where you can be the star on Lost Arts Radio as our guest on a specially produced show just for you. We conduct an interview with you and broadcast it to our growing network and listenership. Our Subscribe Star levels are one of a kind and offer great rewards for any budget. Please help support Lost Arts Radio. We can't do it without you. With increasing censorship on many of our channels, we really need your support today to keep doing what we're doing. As Richard says, we're not even at survival level yet. Lost Arts Radio has 3 weekly shows. Lost Arts Radio Live each Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, which is a live stream currently on multiple platforms in case we get banned from some of the larger ones. Right now, we're on 2 YouTube channels, Facebook Live, Periscope, which is Twitter, Twitch, and DLive. You can access these broadcasts by going to www.lostartsradio.com/live for all the links to those channels. The Planetary Healing Club meets right after Lost Arts Radio Live at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Saturday nights. And our Sunday show with guests airs at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Sunday nights on our Blog Talk Radio channel, our YouTube channels, Facebook pages, and on Brighteon. Be sure to sign up for our free email list just in case we do get banned on big tech's platforms. It's just a matter of time, really. They don't like the stuff we talk about, and they do not want the truth out there. In fact, they have already attacked us numerous times. Join our free email list so we can let you know where we are and how to access our shows. The sign-up button is right on the top right on most pages of our website. The best starting point for all things Lost Arts Radio is our main site, lostartsradio.com, where you can find the hottest news selection videos that we curate just for you. Those are on the homepage and added to daily, as well as articles and breaking news about information you really need to know. Our show archives, the 10 most recent shows, are right on our homepage, as well as our Blog Talk Radio page at blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio, or just click the All Things Radio Show tab right on our website. We're in the podcast directory on iTunes, and all of our shows except the banned ones are on our YouTube channels at Lost Arts Radio and at Diamond Disc. Our Brighteon page is really taking off, and we often have editors' picks videos right on their homepage. Visit brighteon.com/channel/LostArtsRadio. On our site, you can also access our free listener forum as well as sign up for the Planetary Healing Club, which is just $25 a month, where you get private access to a one-on-one interaction with host Richard Sachs and myself and the other club members who participate live. More info can be found at planetaryhealingclub.com. We're providing solutions in there to make the world a better place. Come join us. Stay tuned, because up next, you'll get to hear a really great song by an independent artist that we're doing our best to support. Go to lostartsradio.com/music for the full list of all the great songs and bands that we spin on our audio-only podcast shows. If you're in a band and want to submit a song for consideration for airplay on Lost Arts Radio, visit my website at diamonddiscaudio.com for more information about the music placement, mastering, and mixing work that I do. Thanks again for listening to and supporting Lost Arts Radio. We love having you as part of our family to learn, experience, and grow with.
you go. I'm watching my